All
Okay, we're
right,
live.
we're live. Only 6 minutes late. We did it, guys. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everyone. You're here now.
My fault, my
I
fault.
was informed that we were supposed to be smiling more. I think everybody's doing that last week, but I wasn't there, so here we are, smiling. 6 minutes late. I'm Zach, here with Jennifer and Ryland, giving you some weekly updates on what's going on in the immigration world, and happy to answer any questions that you have as well. Yeah, so please throw them in the chat while we ramble on about various news items that we come across. Who wants to start?
I could start us off. I owe you for being late. It's all my fault. I got caught up in some work and just blanked on this. But it's because I was working so hard for a client. So that makes me look better, right? Okay, so I just wanted to talk about I saw an article. It was published from Stanford, talking about a recent book that was released called Streets of Gold: America's Untold Story of Immigration Success. And it was written by a Stanford economist named Ran Abramitsky and a Princeton economics professor named Leah Boustan. And so they, working together, they studied millions of data points from government agency records, from the US Census Bureau and the IRS, and they even went to Ellis Island to look at history records there, spanning from 1880 to 2020. And some of the findings that they've come to find, I mean, they at least in this article about their book, they were talking about how it's a myth that immigrants are in poverty and that they remain in poverty. Their children remain in poverty. I didn't really think that that was a myth. I think that we talk about immigrant success a lot in the United States, and they proved in their book too that particularly the children of immigrants are able to climb the social ladder of the economy and find success there, which is awesome. But they also talked about some other immigrants, some other immigrant myths, rather. Like, for instance, they talk about, sometimes you hear people say that immigrants are taking over the country, and they said, no, that's not true. Immigrants make up 14% of the US population, but that is the same percentage that they actually took up a century ago. So there hasn't been a change in the number of immigrants in the United States since 1920. So anytime you hear that, that's a myth. Of course, immigrants are sometimes seen as violent criminals. I can think of certain politicians that have made implications like that in the recent history, but they are actually less likely than US born citizens to be arrested and incarcerated for all manners of offenses. And this was true previously. It has become even more true in recent history. That was another myth that they dispelled with this new book. Of course, there's the myth that immigrants are stealing work from U.S. workers. But again, the book shows that they are more likely to fill positions that U.S. employers cannot find U.S. citizens to fill. I know that is also a common thing that people say, but still, the fact that people still regurgitate that immigrants are stealing all of the U.S. jobs. And then finally, this was something that I think is a little bit, it made me feel a little bit better, because, I've been talking about all the myths that you hear, and you do hear them quite often on the news from politicians. But the this book did some research and said, anti-immigration beliefs are actually a minority held belief. And actually, 75% of Americans believe that immigration is a good thing. So even though we're constantly hearing all these negative things and all these, frankly, lies about immigrants in the United States, 75% of Americans still believe that immigration is a good thing. And they're obviously not believing all these lies that are being spread. I wish that percentage was 100% because it's very obviously a good thing for the United States. But at least it's not a 50-50 thing. It's the vast majority of Americans recognize immigration as a good thing, and that all of these things are just BS. So I just wanted to give that little story. Thank you to, again, Ran Abramitsky and Leah Bustan with their new book, Streets of Gold, America's Untold Story of Immigration Success.
Thanks, Ryland. I have a couple of things to add for that. I'm gonna have to read that, but it's interesting you say that like most Americans actually are like pro immigration. We've talked about this a lot on our AILA advocacy committee, and the issue is that for a lot of the people that are pro, it's not like an identity belief, and so they don't like push for it as hard. They aren't as compelled to go to the polls to write to their senators, expressing, that they're in favor of these. Whereas for the minority that is very against it, they have adopted it as an identity belief. And so they feel very strongly about it. They are very vocal about it. And so that's why it seems like more people are, against. But it's interesting. Like, we need to figure out how to mobilize the people that are for it to like actually speak up.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And then it's funny that you were talking about employment, because I read an article, and this isn't my update, but I read an article this morning from a couple of days ago in the New York Times talking about how because the immigrant border crossings are lower, California is actually seeing the agriculture workers, since the 60s, Mexico has been a big supporter of agricultural workers in California. And for the first time, we're seeing those agricultural farms not be able to employ people. You're seeing the farming go overseas or down across the border, down to Mexico or South America, which actually increases our cost here. Everything is going up. Like gas is like over $4.50 now. Fruit and vegetables, produce is going up. And so having less immigration actually is making our food costs go up and everything go up. So
yeah, definitely. I saw that same article. I was gonna maybe talk about that one. And just another example of how Biden's borders are not open. I'm sick of hearing the open borders.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reviewing the news articles this morning. Everything was like, border numbers are down, border numbers are down. And then there was one that popped up from a certain news source that we all know, that said, numbers are up, criminals, there's rapists. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to make just a really offhand joke about immigrants taking over. I'm like, that happened in the 1700s? I don't think it's happening now.
Yeah. And I totally agree that we do need more vocal advocates for immigrants. Maybe we should, we should put together some bumper stickers or something just to spread the word, we need, because that minority is very vocal, and we need to combat that and let our politicians know, no, this is a case, a subject that we really care about too, and we're passionate about.
And for people who are listening who do want to contact your politicians, a lot of people don't know this, but they have staffers. A lot of times it's interns, like college students, who are sitting there taking phone calls and tallying every single call that comes in. And so they actually give those reports to the senators, to the representatives, to your congressman, and that's how they know what their constituents care about. And so you can call and say, hey, I care about immigration, and they'll tally you. And so they'll say, you have this many people in your district that care about this issue. You should, support this issue. So you can, make a change. You can find your representative online. You just put in your address information. It's really easy. So plug for that.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Cool. Do you want to go, Jennifer?
Sure, since I'm just talking a bunch.
Thanks for joining in. I love it.
Yeah, I love that part of it. So, so I was going to talk about, there is a new interim final rule for asylum cases at the border. And I know there's been a lot of talk about, border crossings and Title 42 and everything like that. And so I'm sure some people are aware that there are people who are trying to cross the border, trying to claim asylum at the border, saying that they're fearful to return to their country and they're being held in detention on the other side of the border. And so starting May 31st, so 2 days ago, there is a new rule that people who cross or try to cross and are subject to expedited removal at the border who are eligible for asylum, now starting people that, entered on May 31st, not before, will now have an expedited process to get their asylum claim heard. And so I'll go through some of the details. The rules like 149 pages, I think. So we obviously won't go through all of it. But they're just starting it in a few different cities. And so right now it's just going to be 2 detention facilities in Texas. And asylum officers through U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, I believe, will be, it's USCIS, will be conducting credible fear interviews like they already do. And then if they determine a person has credible fear and entered on or after May 31st, and that person expresses that they want to reside in either Boston, LA, Miami, New York, Newark, which is New Jersey, like right near New York City, or San Francisco, they will be put into this like kind of a pilot program and be given it's a non-adversarial asylum merits interview is what they're calling it. And so the process is they'll, go through CBP, through customs, do the credible fair interview, get referred for the asylum merits interview, and then if they're approved, their asylum case is approved. If they're denied, they will be put into streamline removal proceedings. So the case will be referred to the immigration court like it normally is after USCIS issues, a denial on an asylum case, which it's kind of good, I guess, because people are going to get their cases heard instead of just sitting around. But when I was reading it, I was just thinking of, from the legal access perspective, of how problematic this is going to be for attorneys, because we already don't have enough time to prepare a lot of asylum cases that come to us. And with this, I'll give you guys the timeline. So once the person gets their positive credible fear determination, that date, like the date that the determination is served, becomes the filing date of the asylum application. From that date, the interview, the asylum merits interview, will take place no earlier than 21 days, but no later than 45 days. It's like a month and a half max to prep this like full, interview. And the evidence, additional evidence, has to be submitted 7 days before the interview, if in person, or 10 days by mail. So really, like attorneys that take these cases or that are asked to take these cases are going to have hardly any time to put these cases together. So I think it actually puts people at a disadvantage. I get what they're trying to do, but I think a lot of these people are going to end up denied and in proceedings because, as we've seen with USCIS, or at least as I've seen, I think the rest of us have, USCIS tends to refer most asylum cases to removal proceedings anyway. So I'm not really sure what this is going to do.
Yeah, and I wrote a blog post a couple months ago about how too many, like a large portion of the asylum cases that USCIS refers are actually reversed in the court. So they were improperly referred to the court. They should have been approved by USCIS, but USCIS didn't do it. And so, I could imagine that happening here. And talking about having to gather all that evidence in that time frame, it's ridiculous. I mean, a lot of these cases depend on maybe police reports or trying to get death certificates for people that were victims alongside the person that's trying to apply for asylum. And so you're dealing with government agencies in a foreign country and that can take forever trying to get the proper documents, if you can even get them. But with these timeframes, that is really close.
Yeah. And there's a lot of evidence out there that like people that don't have, or I guess research out there, the people that don't have the evidence, that don't have legal representation, like the denial rates are so much higher.
Yeah.
And we saw that with there's this thing called the dedicated docket that some people might have heard of, that it's kind of like an expedited removal removable based asylum, I guess, docket. Yeah. So the court is trying to manage the huge backlog of asylum cases. So they say, here's one that's just for asylum, and we're going to go really, really quick on it. And yeah, it's like what 99% denial rates, and I don't remember the number of folks who are represented, but it's extremely low. So yeah, the faster they go, the less chances people have to get representation, and the higher chances of denial. So, but maybe that's by design. Maybe this is a method to try to just deny cases and move them out of the queue. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to make that a super negative thing. Maybe it's going to be great because we're going to get super well-trained asylum officers who are going to do a great job of adjudicating cases without evidence. Because you in the law don't require a whole bunch of supporting evidence to support your asylum claim. You can win based off of testimony, or you're supposed to be able to. So maybe that's where we'll end up. We'll end up with just a whole bunch of grants because these asylum officers are going to be just top notch, and not going to see a huge influx into the court system.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
That'd be great.
Okay, you want to go, Zach?
I'll go. I've been quiet for like 10 minutes now. Yeah, so I just had a quick update about the cave. I think I talked about the cave a couple of months ago. I might have remembered that. Essentially, there's this agency. It's called the National Archives and Record Administration, something along those lines, NARA. Then it has a very large limestone cave that it stores a whole bunch of records in. Big ones are, for this particular issue, are alien files, A files, people's files for their immigration cases. Folks who are trying to naturalize, maybe filed their applications around 2020, then COVID hit, and this cave got shut down. So their applications, their files, everything got stuck in this cave, and they've been waiting to be naturalized ever since. It's kind of a ludicrous situation that we have an actual cave that you can't get your actual documents out of. They haven't digitized this, they haven't scanned them, and aren't able to just forward them over to the adjudicating officer. But yeah, there have been people who've been waiting for years now for their naturalization applications to be adjudicated, and the American Immigration Council, this nonprofit, finally filed a lawsuit over this, basically saying like, this is absolutely just ridiculous. Are you kidding me? There's a cave that you can't access. It was closed from 2020 during COVID until I think March of 2022, and then there was no plan to just expedite everybody's cases who was stuck in the cave for a ridiculous period of time. Come on, let's get these people their interviews ASAP. It's important. It's important not just because people deserve to have their cases adjudicated in a timely manner, but also naturalization kind of comes with it some added benefits in certain years. Notably, every 2 years there's an election that if you're a citizen you're able to vote in. So there's people who applied in 2020. An election year, were not able to vote because they were not adjudicated during that time. And now here we are in another election year where they're about to not be able to vote again because their cases are stuck in a cave, a literal cave. I mean, it's just absurd to me every time I hear this, that there's a cave that your application was physically stuck in, because we don't live in 2022 where I would scan a file and have access to it if I needed to. We clearly live in the 1900s and have to snail mail everything around to the various offices. Anyways, it's ridiculous. American Immigration Council sued over it. They're looking for more plaintiffs, so if you're one of these people who had your application stuck for a super long time, you can contact them, or I'm more than happy to sue about this myself, because I think it would be just a fascinating case to and what will probably happen is they'll just say, okay, we'll get your case scheduled for an interview as soon as possible. But ideally what would happen is we would get all kinds of evidence of how poorly managed everything was, and just have some sort of better insight in this very non-transparent agency that's been holding people's applications up for years now. I mean, I could start to complain about processing times across the board, but I won't. That'll take a long time. But anyways, yeah, cool new lawsuit. Finally, some sort of resolution perhaps to this cave issue, and I guess stay tuned. Never would have known about this cave if it wasn't for COVID. So there's some silver linings there.
And if it were a horde of bears, I would get it, you know. But COVID, you just put your mask on. You can still go in that cave. Come on. It's not being overrun by reptilian people. I hope not. And if it is, then we need to get that discovery.
Exactly. That's why we need to sue, so we can get evidence about what's happening. Because
Yeah, it's ridiculous that, I mean, yeah, this story has been going around lawyers and has been talked about for a while now, and it's funny, but it's also sad for these people that have been waiting so long. I mean, not only are they waiting for the ability to participate in our country fully as a citizen, but there are certain individuals that you can apply for as a U.S. citizen that you can't apply for as a green card holder. So if your parents are in desperate need to immigrate to the United States and you're their one person that could potentially help them with that, then citizenship is the only way to do that. And if you've applied and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and your parents are getting older and older, maybe their situation is getting worse and worse, then oh well, sorry, the cave is closed. It's ridiculous, but I'm glad that this lawsuit is going forward. Okay, well, in terms of questions, looks like we don't have any today. It's because I was late. It's my fault.
Late start, people tuned out.
Yeah.
That case thing is crazy. We need to send like Bob Woodward in there to do some investigative reporting.
Yeah.
Or like, you know how Jason Crow went into the ICE, like the geo facility? We need to send in a congressman to like each service center.
Yeah.
Should get AIC on that.
Yeah, I'm sure a bunch of Colorado representatives are big spelunkers. They'd be happy to go down there. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's insane, but thanks, guys.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for today. It was nice speaking with you, Zach. Nice speaking with you, Jennifer. I'm doing the hosting right now. I'm wrapping this thing up. If you guys have any questions, or if you have anything you want to talk about next week, we'll be here again on Thursday. Feel free to tune in then.
Thanks, everybody. Bye, guys.